You know, when we think about power, whether that's in like a corporate boardroom or a heated salary negotiation or even a literal battlefield, we usually default to this mindset of physics.
Right, yeah, like a very Newtonian way to view conflict.
Exactly. We think about force. The person who hits the hardest, who has the loudest voice, or, who brings the biggest budget to the table is the one who wins.
Because every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You
Yeah.
push, I push back harder.
Right.
It's just a binary system of escalation. And honestly, playing by those rules is exhausting.
It really is. But then you look at a truly masterful negotiator or just a brilliant strategist, and suddenly the rules of physics just don't seem to apply anymore.
No, they really don't.
They don't push back, they don't raise their voice to match yours, they just like tilt the floor and you go sliding.
Wow, tilt the floor.
Yeah.
I like that.
And when you sent us this source material, this incredibly detailed character design document for a tabletop role-playing game, that was the exact dynamic that stood out.
Oh, absolutely.
We are looking at the mechanics of a fictional magic user, specifically a warlock. But I want to be clear to you listening, this isn't just a sheet of numbers and spells.
Far from it. What we're looking at here is essentially a masterclass in psychology, in positioning, and fundamentally redefining what power actually looks like.
Yeah, so, okay, let's unpack this. The mission of our deep dive today is to explore a concept the source notes call the Velvet Cataclysm.
Such a great name.
Right. This is a character who absolutely refuses to play the game on the terms presented to her. She doesn't win by hitting the hardest. She wins by controlling the narrative of the battlefield itself.
Yeah, and to really understand how she operates, we have to establish her core worldview first.
Okay, set the stage for us.
So the document categorizes her moral alignment as neutral evil, or chaotic neutral, and specifies that she's an Archfey Warlock.
Which, for those who don't play, means what exactly?
Well, without getting bogged down in the gaming manuals, what that actually means is she draws her power from unpredictable sort of fairy tale entities, and her personal operating system just completely ignores societal morals.
She just doesn't care.
Not at all. She runs on one single principle, which is desire over duty.
I love that. The notes actually describe her at one point as a hypnotic apex predator.
Which is such a vivid phrase, right? I mean, she doesn't just blast her enemies with raw magic. She manipulates the environment and their minds until they effectively destroy themselves.
It's all very theatrical.
Exactly. Every single spell she casts feels less like combat and more like a carefully directed performance.
Which, raises an immediate functional question for me. We know what her vibe is, but how does a player actually execute this in a game without just dealing raw damage like a standard spellcaster?
Right. How does it work practically?
Yeah. If she isn't the heavy hitter of the group, what is she actually doing when a fight breaks out?
So the notes redefine her combat role entirely. In gaming terms, players usually rely on DPS characters.
Damage per second.
Exactly. Those are the heavy hitters who just want to empty the enemy's health bar as fast as possible.
Oh.
But she is not a standard DPS. The document calls her a controlled DPS hybrid.
Okay.
Or, to use this incredibly evocative term from the author, a puppet sniper.
A puppet sniper? That's terrifying.
Right. Instead of reacting to the chaos of a sword fight, she directs the traffic.
Oh, I see.
Her frontline allies love her because she literally feeds them vulnerable targets. And rival spellcasters hate her because she constantly disrupts their positioning.
And looking at the mechanics of how she does this, it revolves around her signature loop. It pairs a basic spell called Eldritch Blast with a secondary effect called Repelling Blast.
Which violently knocks enemies backward.
Yes. And reading through how she uses this, a specific analogy came to my mind.
Oh, let's hear it.
Usually, a combat character in one of these games operates like a bouncer at a nightclub. If you cause trouble, the bouncer physically grabs you, wrestles you to the ground, and throws you out.
Very physical, very direct.
Right. It works, but it's messy. It requires immense physical effort.
And crucially, it puts the bouncer at risk of actually taking a punch.
Precisely. But this character, she isn't the bouncer. She is the VIP curator holding the velvet rope.
Oh, that's spot on.
She doesn't lay a finger on you. She just looks at you, decides your name is no longer on the list, and lets gravity do the rest.
Yeah, she pushes you off a cliff or slides you into a roaring fire.
Yeah.
Or simply knocks you out of arm's reach of her allies.
And the notes perfectly describe this mechanic. They don't call it dealing damage. They call it utilizing humiliation physics.
Humiliation physics. That phrase really captures the sheer psychological warfare at play here.
It really does.
She relies on charm, fear, and confusion. Her core philosophy, directly quoted from the text, is, I don't fight you, I convince reality you've already lost.
It's so arrogant, but it works.
What's fascinating here is how that philosophy dictates the way she handles her own limitations, too.
Yes. There is a highly specific, honestly pretty funny detail in the notes about this that perfectly illustrates her mindset.
The shrinking thing, right?
Yes. There's a section that asks, can warlocks shrink enemies? Because obviously, making an opponent physically tiny fits this dominator, puppet sniper vibe perfectly.
Sure, it makes total sense for the character.
But the rules of the game don't actually give her a spell to shrink people.
So she just fakes it.
Beautifully. She uses a completely different spell called Hold Person, which physically paralyzes the target.
Right.
But she flavors the psychological effect of the paralysis as shrinking their perception. They are frozen in place, utterly helpless, and as a result, they feel incredibly small.
Wow.
Because to her, making a towering warrior feel diminished and insignificant is far more on brand and far more devastating than literally altering their physical height.
It really highlights a core theme here. Subjective reality is often more potent than objective reality.
Definitely.
But, if her whole identity is based on mental dominance and avoiding brute force, the actual math of her character, her statistics, they have to reflect that psychology, right?
They do, and the way her stats are laid out is fascinating because they completely ignore traditional game logic.
How so?
Well, her background is listed as a human entertainer. It's a versatile origin. And the source makes a brilliant framing distinction. It says she didn't used to perform. She never stopped performing.
Oh, wow. So she's always on.
Always. Every conversation she has is staged. Every spell she casts is choreography. Every fight she enters is just another spotlight.
And the notes explicitly address the math here, stating, we're not min-maxing, we're mapping her psyche.
Which is pretty rare, right?
Very. For context, min-maxing is a niche gaming term where a player mathematically optimizes their stats to make their character as invincible as possible, often at the expense of making any logical narrative sense.
Right, they just want to win the math game.
Exactly. But this document does the exact opposite. Her physical strength score, for example, is an 8.
Which is low.
That is actively below average, yeah.
Because she views physical struggle as fundamentally inelegance.
Exactly. If a heavy stone door needs to be pushed open, she doesn't strain herself trying to shove it. She manipulates someone else into doing the manual labor.
Of course she does.
Like perhaps by convincing a proud warrior that moving the door would be this heroic display of their power.
That is so manipulative.
Oh, entirely.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, her dexterity score is a 14. But this isn't because she's doing acrobatic backflips to dodge arrows. The notes refer to this stat as her controlled grace.
Controlled grace.
Right. She moves deliberately and flawlessly because she assumes she is always constantly being watched by an audience.
Okay, wait. Looking at these numbers, I have to push back a little or just point out a glaring contradiction here.
What's that?
Her intelligence and her wisdom scores are both sitting at a dead average 10.
Yeah, they are.
If she is this master manipulator, this puppet sniper who controls the battlefield and bends reality to her will, shouldn't she be an absolute genius? Like, how is she pulling off complex psychological warfare with totally average intelligence?
I mean, it seems counterintuitive at first, but the document addresses this beautifully. She isn't book smart.
Okay.
She doesn't care about academic theory, historical facts, or logical puzzles.
Yeah.
She is exclusively people smart.
I see.
She understands human desire, she tracks attention, and she recognizes leverage. Cognitive intelligence simply isn't required for that.
That actually makes a lot of sense. What about the wisdom score, though?
Right, so wisdom, which in the mechanics of this game usually dictates a character's general perception and awareness of their surroundings, hers is also at 10 because she operates with what the notes call selective awareness.
Selective awareness. How does the author define that in practice?
Well, she reads people perfectly when it serves her narrative or gives her an advantage. But she completely ignores reality if it doesn't align with her ego or her current performance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if a threat doesn't interest her, it effectively doesn't exist. She is incredibly perceptive, but her perception is heavily filtered by her own vanity.
Which naturally brings us to the crown jewel of her psychological map, her charisma.
Oh, yeah.
It sits at a massive 17, and it is further boosted by a specific trait she acquired called the Fey Touched Feat, which represents this innate magical talent that gives her the ability to teleport short distances using a spell called Misty Step.
Essential for positioning.
Exactly. But regarding her charisma score, The notes have this quote that just summarizes her entire existence. It says, she doesn't pass charisma checks. She creates the situation where they matter.
That is the defining line of the character right there.
It really is. People don't agree with her because she is logical. She's not presenting a spreadsheet of facts to win an argument.
No, definitely not.
They agree with her because her sheer presence warps their attention. It just feels correct to do what she says.
Right, so we've seen how she curates a fight and how her mathematical stats are quite literally a map of her vanity and grace.
Yeah.
But tabletop games are generally built on 3 distinct pillars of gameplay, which are combat, exploration, and social interaction. So how does a character whose entire identity revolves around mental dominance operate when swords aren't drawn? Like, how does she handle just exploring a dangerous dungeon?
Well, in the exploration pillar, she plays a game of curiosity and advantage. She refuses to brute force problems.
Classic.
Yeah, if the group is facing a locked door that is clearly rigged with the deadly trap, she is absolutely not getting her hands dirty trying to dismantle the mechanism.
No way.
She will casually step back, feign ignorance, and let a stronger, perhaps more eager ally trigger the trap first to see what it does.
Wow, just using her friends as bait.
Basically, she seeks leverage, she looks for mysteries, and she thrives in ambiguity. And the best part, if a situation is boring, she instantly disengages from it.
Because boredom is the ultimate enemy of a performance.
Exactly, which leads right into the social interaction pillar. The source material actually titles this section, The Domain of Absolute Power.
Because this is where she's the most dangerous.
Oh, for sure. She walks into a room and instantly reads the insecurity, ego, and desire in the people around her.
And then she uses it against them.
Yes, she responds with exactly the right conversational tool, whether that's flattery, manipulation, or just subtle pressure. But her signature move in a dialogue isn't shouting or interrupting people. It's a technique the notes call the rewrite.
The rewrite is a fascinating concept to unpack because it has profound real-world applications.
It really does.
When someone else speaks, she doesn't try to talk over them to assert dominance. Instead, she reframes what they just said.
Right.
She twists the tone, subtly redirects the underlying premise, and suddenly, without ever raising her voice, she becomes the center of gravity again.
Think about how this works in real life for a second. If someone in a boardroom aggressively says, "Your department is asking for way too much budget, we are cutting it."
A normal response is to defensively argue the numbers.
Exactly. That's pushing back against physics. The rewrite doesn't argue the math. The rewrite pauses, looks mildly disappointed, and says, "I'm surprised you're willing to risk the entire launch of this project over a rounding error."
Oh, that's so good.
You don't raise your voice, you just change what the argument is actually about.
You tilt the floor.
Exactly, you tilt the floor. But, illusions and psychological warfare only hold up until someone gets close enough to break them.
That's true.
So what happens to a character allergic to physical effort when an enemy finally breaks through her web of control and simply swings a heavy sword at her face?
Well, that is where her specific Warlock abilities trigger.
Yeah.
Specifically her level 6 Archfey feature called Misty Escape.
Okay, tell us about Misty Escape.
The moment she actually takes physical damage, the ability activates automatically. She instantly turns completely invisible and teleports up to 60 feet away.
The flavor text the notes provided for how this actually looks in the game is so good.
It really is.
When an enemy manages to hit her, she doesn't scream in pain, she vanishes. And the translation of that action is essentially, "You touched me. That's adorable. Goodbye."
It is the ultimate refusal to engage on the enemy's terms. You finally close the distance, you land your best hit, and your reward is that your target ceases to exist in front of you.
It must be infuriating for the enemy.
Oh, completely. And as she levels up and becomes more powerful, the notes provide a snapshot of her at level 12, referring to her as the Archfey Ascendant.
The Archfey Ascendant.
Right, and her philosophy evolves further here. She acquires specific magical items, like a cloak of displacement.
Oh, explain how that cloak works mechanically, because it fits the theme perfectly.
So a standard warrior would wear heavy steel plate armor to absorb the impact of a blow.
Right. Again, physics.
Exactly. The cloak of displacement doesn't absorb anything. It generates a literal optical illusion. It constantly projects an image of her standing a few inches away from her actual physical body.
That's amazing.
It ensures that even when you think you've cornered her, you're usually just swinging your weapon at a phantom.
And at this level, she also gains access to a spell called Mass Suggestion.
Yes, very important.
And this is where her core mantra upgrades. It goes from control through desire to a terrifying new baseline, which is Reality is negotiable.
Reality is negotiable.
Physical positioning is negotiable. Objective truth is negotiable. Deeply held loyalty is negotiable. And she is always the one dictating the terms of the negotiation.
To truly grasp how this philosophy of negotiable reality works in practice, we really need to see it in motion.
Yes, we do.
And the source document doesn't just give us these abstract psychological theories. It actually scripts out a climactic encounter to demonstrate exactly how she operates when all the chips are down.
They title this scene, The Ballroom of Glass and Thorns.
Let's set the stage for this, because the physical environment is completely integral to how she fights.
Okay, picture this. The party enters a ruined, fey-touched ballroom. The space is filled with shattered mirrors, glowing, unstable chandeliers, and the floor is entirely covered in dangerous, jagged glass shards.
So it's difficult terrain.
Very difficult. Standing in the center of the room is the boss, the Thorncourt Duelist. He is a fey champion, and he is surrounded by 6 heavily armored, enchanted knights.
So it is 7 enemies against the party in a room made entirely of environmental hazards.
It is a completely unfair fight.
Which, to her, is the perfect canvas.
Right.
The fight begins. Round 1. The initiative is rolled. She doesn't pull out a weapon. She doesn't cast a massive fireball to deal damage. She casts Hypnotic Pattern.
Okay, what does that do?
A swirling, mesmerizing array of fey light blooms across the entire room. 4 of the 6 knights fail to resist the psychological effect and freeze completely mid-motion, utterly captivated by the lights.
Wow.
One of them actually drops his sword to the floor.
She effectively pauses the chaos. I mean, think about that real-world corporate meeting analogy again. She's the person who doesn't shout over the noise of the argument, but instead asks one quiet, paradigm-shifting question that freezes the entire room.
Exactly.
In a single action, without dealing a single point of damage, she edits a 7-on-1 pileup down to a manageable 2-on-1 encounter.
She just edits the fight.
Yeah, she casually tilts her head and says to the Phrasen Knights, "Stay right there, you're much prettier like this." She completely rewrites the tempo of the fight.
And then we move into round 2. One of the remaining unfrozen knights charges her. This is where her positioning strategy, that puppet sniper mechanic we talked about, comes into play.
Right, the Eldritch Blast.
Yes. She uses her signature Eldritch Blast combined with the repelling knockback effect. She hits the charging knight, and the force pushes him violently backward, sliding him across the jagged glass floor and right off the edge of a raised balcony.
Brutal.
He plummets into the dark.
And she doesn't even bother to watch him land. She just murmurs, "Gravity is such a reliable ally."
So good.
She used the structural advantage of the room to do the dirty work for her. But then the boss, the Thorncourt Duelist, finally manages to close the distance. He steps inside her guard and strikes her with his blade, a clean hit. This is the exact scenario we discussed earlier.
And here's the Misty Escape feature working in real time.
Yes.
The moment the blade connects, the illusion drops. She vanishes, she turns completely invisible, leaving the boss swinging at empty air, and she reappears perched on a high, untouched balcony looking down at him.
And what does she say?
She whispers, "Careful. You almost made me try."
Oh, that is so disrespectful. I love it. Which brings us to round 3, the climax. The knights are either frozen by the lights or thrown off a balcony by gravity. It's just her and the duelist left.
1-on-1.
And again, with the boss isolated, she doesn't use a massive damage spell to finish him off physically. She decides to break his will instead. She casts Suggestion,
Which is a spell that magically forces a creature to follow a course of action, provided the command is worded in a way that sounds somewhat reasonable to the target.
Right. She looks down from the balcony and speaks softly to him. "You've already lost. Kneel, and we can pretend this was graceful."
And the boss fails his psychological resistance check.
His mind accepts the premise. He drops his weapon and sinks to one knee. The fight is effectively over.
The best part of this entire sequence is the reaction from her own teammates. It highlights the absolute paradigm shift she brings to a conflict.
Oh, read that part. It's hilarious.
The party's fighter is standing there looking around, utterly confused by the silence. The rogue lowers his daggers and asks, "Did we even fight?"
And the cleric realizes, I didn't have to cast a single healing spell. So what does this all mean for you? Why did we spend this time analyzing the mechanics of a fictional warlock in a fantasy ballroom?
Right. What's the takeaway here?
Because the true lesson of the Velvet Cataclysm isn't about magic spells, dice rolls, or game statistics. It's about recognizing that you do not always have to play the game on the terms presented to you by your opponent.
No, you really don't.
Look at what she accomplished in that ballroom. She reduced the chaos. She dictated the pacing of the encounter, and she broke the enemy's will to fight without ever focusing on reducing their physical hit points.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, power isn't about how hard you can hit the obstacles in your life. It's not about winning a shouting match, and it's certainly not about burning yourself out trying to break through a solid brick wall.
Definitely not.
True power is about how effectively you can reframe the encounter so the obstacle simply ceases to be relevant. It's about recognizing that when someone pushes you, your first instinct doesn't have to be pushing back harder.
You just tilt the floor and let gravity do the work. Which leaves us with this final thought for you to mull over. The next time you find yourself entering a high-pressure situation, maybe it's a tense negotiation at work, a heated argument with a partner, or a daunting creative project that feels completely overwhelming, take a breath and ask yourself, are you rushing in to deal damage, or are you stepping back to decide when and how the fight is already over?